The art world was in turmoil. The chaos and uncertainty of the times were reflected in the studios and galleries where artists struggled to find new means of expression. World War II had just ended. The world was grappling with the aftermath of unprecedented destruction and loss. Cities lay in ruins and societies were trying to rebuild from the ashes. Artists, many of whom had fled Europe for the haven of New York City, were grappling with the horrors they had witnessed. They sought refuge in their art, using it as a means to process their trauma and make sense of a world that had been turned upside down. Traditional art forms seemed inadequate to express the profound anxieties of the time. The old ways of painting and sculpting felt insufficient, unable to capture the depth of human suffering and the complexity of the new world order. Something new was needed, a radical departure. Artists began to experiment with new techniques and forms, seeking to break free from the constraints of the past. This is where Abstract Expressionism emerged, rising from the ashes of Surrealism. It was a movement that sought to go beyond the boundaries of traditional art, to explore new realms of creativity and expression. Surrealism, with its exploration of the subconscious mind, provided fertile ground for abstract expressionism. The Surrealists had already begun to delve into the depths of the human psyche, paving the way for the more radical approaches that would follow. Artists like Joan Mitchell and André Masson had already begun to explore automatic drawing and gestural brushstrokes, techniques that would become central to abstract expressionism. These methods allowed artists to tap into their unconscious minds, to create art that was raw and unfiltered. But abstract expressionism went further. It pushed the boundaries even more, abandoning representation altogether. The focus was on the act of creation itself, on the physical and emotional process of painting. It abandoned representation altogether, seeking to express the raw, unfiltered emotions of the artist. The canvas became a battlefield, a place where the artist could confront their innermost feelings and fears. This new movement was characterized by large canvases, bold colors, and an emphasis on the physical act of painting. The size of the canvases allowed for grand gestures, for the artists to immerse themselves fully in their work. The artists of abstract expressionism were not interested in depicting the external world. They turned inward, focusing on their own emotions and experiences, using abstract shapes and colors to convey their inner turmoil. They sought to capture the inner world of feeling and experience. Their art was intensely personal, a direct reflection of their emotional state at the time of creation. Their paintings were not pictures of things, they were things in themselves, gestures frozen in time, emotions made visible, the texture of the paint, the movement of the brushstrokes, all became integral parts of the artwork. The movement was a rebellion against the constraints of tradition, a celebration of individual expression, and a reflection of the anxieties of the post-war era. It was a bold statement, a declaration of artistic freedom. It was a seismic shift in the art world, one that would have a profound and lasting impact on the course of art history. Abstract expressionism redefined what art could be, opening up new possibilities for future generations of artists. Action painting, one of the two main branches of abstract expressionism, emphasized the physical process of painting. This movement emerged in the mid-20th century, primarily in New York City, and was characterized by its dynamic and spontaneous techniques. For these artists, the act of creation was as important as the finished work, if not more so. The process itself was a form of performance, a dance between the artist and the canvas. They dripped, poured, and flung paint onto their canvases, often working on the floor rather than at an easel. This method allowed them to move around the canvas freely, engaging with it from all angles. These artists saw the canvas as an arena for action, a space where they could engage with their materials in a direct and visceral way. The physicality of their movements was integral to the creation of their art. The resulting paintings were not representations of the world, but records of the artist's movements and gestures. Each stroke, each splash of paint was a testament to the artist's presence and energy. They were traces of the creative process itself, imbued with the energy and emotion of the moment of their making. The canvas captured the raw, unfiltered expression of the artist's inner world. Action painters like Jackson Pollock were interested in exploring the unconscious mind, they sought to bypass rational thought and tap into a more primal, instinctual form of creativity. They believed that by surrendering to the act of painting, they could tap into a deeper level of creativity. This approach allowed them to access emotions and ideas that lay beneath the surface of conscious thought. Their paintings were not planned or preconceived. They emerged organically from the subconscious. The artists allowed their instincts to guide them, resulting in works that were spontaneous and authentic. This approach to painting was revolutionary. It broke away from traditional techniques and conventions, paving the way for new forms of artistic expression. It challenged the traditional notion of art as a craft that required skill and precision. Instead, it celebrated the unpredictable and the unplanned, valuing the process over the product. For these artists, spontaneity and improvisation were paramount. They embraced the unexpected, allowing their art to evolve naturally and without constraint. The canvas became a battleground for their emotions, a place where they could exorcise their demons and express their deepest selves. Through their art, they confronted their fears, desires, and innermost thoughts, creating works that were intensely personal and profoundly moving. Jackson Pollock was the epitome of the action painter. His revolutionary drip technique, which involved pouring and dripping paint onto canvases laid out on the floor, became synonymous with the movement.
My painting does not come from the easel.
Pollock's large-scale canvases were covered in intricate webs of color, created by his controlled yet seemingly chaotic movements. He would dance around the canvas, pouring paint from cans, flinging it from sticks, and even dripping it directly from his brush. The physicality of his process was evident in every mark on the canvas. While his paintings may have appeared random, Pollock's technique was far from haphazard. He carefully orchestrated the flow and viscosity of his paints, using gravity and momentum to create his signature effects. He was a master of his materials, able to manipulate them with astonishing precision. Pollock's work was met with both acclaim and controversy. Some saw his paintings as a powerful expression of the subconscious, a breakthrough in abstract art. Others dismissed them as mere drippings, devoid of meaning or skill. However, there was no denying the impact of Pollock's work. He had redefined the very act of painting, pushing the boundaries of what art could be. Willem De Kooning excavating the figure. While Pollock was dissolving the figure into pure abstraction, Willem De Kooning was deconstructing it, then reconstructing it in a raw and visceral way. De Kooning's paintings were often figurative, but his figures were distorted, fragmented, and abstracted almost to the point of unrecognizability. De Kooning's most famous series, Woman, exemplified his approach to the figure. These paintings depicted women, but they were far from traditional portraits. Their bodies were twisted and contorted, their faces grotesque masks of paint. They were both alluring and repellent, familiar yet monstrous. De Kooning's paintings were full of energy and movement. His brushstrokes were bold and gestural, slashing across the canvas with a ferocious intensity. He layered his paint thickly, creating a rich and textured surface that seemed to pulsate with life. For De Kooning, painting was an act of both creation and destruction. He would build up his images, then scrape them away, layer upon layer, until he achieved the desired effect. His paintings were the result of a struggle, a battle between the artist and his materials. Franz Kline, black and white and everything in between. Franz Kline's abstract paintings were characterized by their bold black and white forms, which seemed to dance and collide across the canvas. His work was a study in contrasts, light and shadow, positive and negative space, gesture and form. Kline's paintings were often inspired by the urban landscapes of New York City. The soaring architecture, the dark alleys, the stark contrasts of light and shadow, these elements found their way into his work, transformed into abstract compositions of remarkable power. Kline's process was deceptively simple. He would begin by making small sketches on telephone book pages using a brush loaded with black enamel paint. He would then enlarge these sketches onto large canvases, using house painter's brushes to create his signature bold strokes. Despite the seeming simplicity of his means, Kline's paintings were imbued with a remarkable sense of depth and complexity. His black and white forms seemed to hover between the two-dimensional surface of the canvas and the illusion of three-dimensional space. They were both abstract and evocative, suggesting forms and spaces without ever fully defining them. Color field painting, meditations in color and form. This movement emerged in the mid-20th century, offering a new way to experience abstract art. While action painting was all about the energy and immediacy of the brushstroke, capturing the artist's dynamic movements and raw emotion, color field painting offered a more contemplative approach to abstraction. It invited viewers to lose themselves in vast expanses of color. These artists were interested in exploring the expressive potential of pure color and form. They believed that color could convey profound emotional and spiritual experiences. Their paintings were often characterized by large, flat areas of color, creating immersive visual fields that enveloped the viewer, intended to evoke a sense of serenity and contemplation. The simplicity and purity of these works encouraged a meditative state.
Color field painters believed that color itself could be a powerful emotional force. They saw color as a language that could speak directly to the soul. We carefully selected our colors and juxtaposed them in ways that created subtle shifts in mood and atmosphere. Each hue was chosen for its ability to evoke specific feelings. Our paintings were not about depicting the external world, but about creating an internal experience for the viewer. We wanted to engage the viewer's emotions and imagination.
We were also interested in exploring the relationship between figure and ground, the interplay between the painted and unpainted areas of the canvas, between the painted areas of the canvas and the unpainted areas. This tension created a dynamic visual experience. We sought to create a sense of ambiguity and spatial tension, where the boundaries between forms seemed to dissolve, inviting viewers to question their perceptions, where the boundaries between forms seemed to dissolve. This dissolution of form encouraged a deeper engagement with the artwork.
Color field painting was a reaction against the gestural excesses of action painting. It sought to strip away the noise and focus on the essence of color and form. While they shared a commitment to abstraction, color field painters sought a more meditative and contemplative art form. They wanted their work to be a sanctuary for the mind. Their paintings were invitations to contemplation, offering viewers a space for quiet reflection and emotional resonance. These works were not just to be seen, but to be felt deeply.